This program may and will contain adult language. Parental discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to Sundays with Dwayne. I don't know if you've noticed this week or not, but Donald Trump's opened up a can of worms in this country. Is talking about illegal immigration. I mean, there's talk now of repealing or amending the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. Before we get into that, I want to just briefly touch on the history of the 14th Amendment. Following Civil War, Congress submitted to the states three different amendments as part of its Reconstruction program. It would guarantee equal civil and legal rights to black citizens in this country. The major provision of the 14th Amendment was to grant citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, thereby granting citizenship to former slaves. Another equally important provision was the statement that nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protections of the laws. Now, the right to due process of law and equal protection of the law now apply both to the state and federal governments. It was on June 16th of 1866 the House Joint Resolution proposed the 14th Amendment to the states, and on July 28th of 1868 the 14th Amendment was ratified by 28 of the then 37 states. So they had a majority. But unfortunately, the 14th Amendment failed to extend the Bill of Rights to the states, and it also failed to protect the rights of black Americans. One legacy of Reconstruction was the fight of black and white Americans to make the promise of the 14th Amendment a reality. There were multiple court cases involved. Congress enacted legislation, the executive branch attempted to enforce measures to guard all citizens' rights. And while these things didn't succeed in empowering the 14th Amendment during the Reconstruction, things finally changed in the 20th century, most notably the 1960s, where we started to see a change for the better. Now, let's talk about the 14th Amendment in general. I'm going to read to you each section. Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. Now, I want you to notice one thing. It said nothing about illegal aliens coming across the border and having children. No such thing as anchor babies spoken of in Section 1 of the Constitution, or the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Section 2. Representatives shall be appointed among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole numbers of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for President and Vice President of the United States, representatives of Congress, and the executive and judicial officers of the state, or the members of the legislature thereof, is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States, or in any way abridged except for participation in rebellion or other crime, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years of age in such state. Basically, it covered the rights to vote. And it basically was saying that The Civil War, you could now vote in the South, but, and it excluded the Native Americans because they weren't taxed at that point. But a lot of that changed back in the early 20th century. Section 3: no person shall be senator or representative in Congress, or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who have previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer in a state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each House, remove such disability. Basically, what they were doing there was saying that members of the Confederacy couldn't run for office unless Congress changed the law. Now, also, giving aid and comfort to the enemies could apply to the current commander in chief because that's exactly what he's doing with the Iran deal, but that's another topic for another day. Section 4: the validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pension and bounties for service in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, of course, civil war at that point, shall not be questioned. But neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or any claim for the loss or emancipation of any slave. But all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void. In other words, no reparations. And Section 5: the Congress shall have power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. So, what does it all mean? The 14th Amendment addresses many aspects of citizenship and the rights of the citizens. The most commonly used and most frequently litigated of that is the phrase equal protection of the laws. And it's covered in court cases. For example, you got Brown versus the Board of Education, which was racial discrimination in the schools. Roe v. Wade, reproduction rights, abortion. Gore v. Bush, or Bush v. Gore, however you want to look at it. Election recounts. Remember the hanging Chads back in 2000? Reed versus Reed, which is a gender discrimination case. And the University of California versus Bakke, Bakke, I guess that's how it's pronounced. Racial quotas in education, affirmative action. Now, the key clauses of the 14th Amendment, there's actually 4. The first, state and federal citizenship for all persons regardless of race, both born or naturalized in the United States, was reaffirmed. Number 2, no state shall be allowed to abridge the privileges and immunities of citizens. Number 3, no person was allowed to be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And number 4, no person could be denied equal protection of the law. This is where it gets a little shady. No state would be allowed to abridge the privileges and immunities of citizens. Well, our rights are being trampled all the time. Number 3, no person was allowed to be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Eminent domain, does that ring a bell? And life and liberty, what about the life of a child, an unborn child? Shouldn't they have equal protection of the laws? See, over time, numerous lawsuits have arisen that have referenced the 14th Amendment. And in fact, that amendment has used the words, privileges and immunities clause, along with the interpretation of the due process clause. And it's meant that states as well as federal power is subject to the Bill of Rights. And furthermore, the courts have interpreted the words person to include corporations. Therefore, they're protected by due process along with being granted equal protection. That was in the election laws because of corporations giving money to particular candidates. Now, with all that in mind, I'm going to reiterate one more time. There is not one thing said in the 14th Amendment about illegal aliens crossing the border into the United States and having children in order to become citizens. There is no such thing as an anchor baby mentioned in the 14th Amendment. But the left and the right, to a certain extent, have twisted the 14th Amendment for so long now that they think it's basically their catch all amendment for any cause that they have, that they want to follow, they want to push. When I was looking at all the stuff that the 14th Amendment covers, I was shocked because it was like 4 pages, single space of stuff that, I never thought about being under the 14th Amendment. Let me give you just an example. I've narrowed this down to about 2 pages. Excuse me. Police power is defined and limited. The definition of liberty is in the 14th Amendment, obviously. Regulatory labor laws, laws regulating the hours of labor, laws regulating labor in mines, child labor laws, minimum wage laws, workmen's compensation, collective bargaining, railroad safety, corporation business and trade regulations, corporation and businesses in general, discrimination, fraud and sale in goods and securities. Now, Congress has made themselves immune to that particular thing. Banking, insurance. It also covers the protection of states' resources, oil and gas, the protection of property and agricultural crops, water. Now you're talking the EPA, fish and game. That's pretty much the Fish and Wildlife Department. Ownership of real estate, property, zoning, estate succession, abandoned property, health, safety, and morals. Well, that's pretty much out the window in Congress. Safety regulations, sanitation, food, drug, milk, intoxicating liquor, regula- regulation of motor vehicles and carriers, and protecting morality. Again, that's pretty much out the window when you're dealing with Congress. Taxes, which pretty much includes everything under the sun, the taxation and the classification for purpose of taxation, and the collection of taxes thereof, which is the basis of the IRS, covered under the 14th Amendment. Eminent domain, again, you know, the rights of the individual, the rights to have property, due process. Eminent domain pretty much walks all over that. Family relationships, the interests of retarded and mentally ill people, basically the commitment and treatment thereof. The right to die, equality, of course, due process, judicial process, the separation of powers, everything related to courts and jury trials. The defense, costs, damages, penalties, statute of limitations, jury trials, appeals, the rights of prisoners, probation and parole, the punishment of crime, and juvenile offenders, all covered under the 14th Amendment. Foreign corporations and non residents. This is where they are getting around with the illegal aliens, is the non residents and foreign corporations part of this. Special assessments, which includes Obamacare, police power regulations, other business and employee relations, labor relations, monopolies, unfair trade practices, social welfare. I mean, we do live in a welfare state. Education. The development and application of separate but equal is covered under the 14th Amendment. The implementation of school deregulation, busing. Uh, Basically, efforts to curb busing and other desegregation remedies. So they basically counter each other. The termination of court supervision, which would apply actually to the courts and jury trials and all that. The 14th Amendment also covers capital punishment, housing, Other areas of discrimination, if you're gay and you go into an apartment and they won't rent to you because you're gay, transportation, public facilities, marriage, and that now includes gay marriage, public accommodations, elections, sex. Did you know the 14th Amendment covers sex? I didn't. Illegitimacy, the right to travel, residency requirements, educational opportunities, and then you have fundamental interest in the political process that includes voting, voter qualification, access to ballots, the appropriate of districting. You have all these districts and they kind of realign every few years, and basically the weighing of votes, the counting of votes. And last but not least, our old friend, abortion. All of that is covered, and that is just the highlights. So when you're talking about the 14th Amendment, you're talking about something that covers a lot of ground in this country. And due to the legal interpretations of the courts, this now is including illegal immigration, like I said before. I want to give you a little insight here. My first marriage, my first wife and I, we went on a week's honeymoon to Cancun, most notably to a resort about an hour outside of Cancun in a place called Cantona. It's near the Mayan ruins. Beautiful resort. When we got there, there's armed guards, okay? But that was to keep the drug cartels away. As we're driving in, we're a mile off the main road and right on the beach. I look over and I see this decent looking apartment complex. There's like 20 apartments in this thing. Least to my knowledge, at that point, I'm figuring, well, they got one, maybe two people in a room. They had six people per apartment. Every one of the people that I talked to, I mean, they enjoy their job, don't get me wrong, but they work some long ass hours, okay? They would take an afternoon siesta for about an hour, hour and a half, and then they were up until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Then they had to be back up at 6:30 to prepare for breakfast. These people work 7 days a week like that. Every one of them I talked to wanted to come to the United States. They wanted to come and live the American dream. There were two or three of them. One guy in particular, his name was Luis, and I'll never forget this guy. You know, I'd have my morning breakfast and then I'd get my morning mimosa or my morning mudslide. I'd start to light a cigarette, and there's a lighter right there. There's an ashtray right there. He was our personal servant. That was pretty much how he put it. He was there to take care of me and my then wife. I gave him one hell of a tip, let me tell you. We went from Cantona into Cancun. Like I said, it's about an hour outside. About halfway between Cantona and Cancun, I'm looking over and the roads are built up because there's jungle out through here. So they build the roads up, 50, 60 foot. I notice over here to the side, there is an apartment building. Looked to me like it was just a regular brick building with a gable roof and a little store next to it, almost like a general store. Wasn't a convenience store or anything. I did notice that it didn't have windows. Come to think of it, not too many of the places I saw did have windows. Saw one place that had goats and chickens coming in and out because there was no doors there either. People were sleeping in hammocks outside. But anyway, we go into Cancun. There's multi-million dollar hotels there, and in between these hotels are squatters' huts. There's trees with boards nailed to the limbs where people were sleeping in the trees like monkeys. Or there would be mud huts or cardboard. And if it rained, all that was gone. They have to rebuild it. These were the people that worked in these multi-million-dollar hotels. That's how they lived. They were living outdoors. No plumbing, unless they went inside to use that if they were allowed. I don't know. On the way back from Cancun, it had rained. Oh my God, it rained torrential rains. I had never seen it rain so hard in my life. And the water is almost up to the road. I mean, here's the road and here's the water just right here. And I look over as we're going back and I see the apartment building, just the gable roof, and everybody sitting on it. You couldn't even see the store. There was that much water in the jungle because there's no sewage, no sewers out there, nothing to pump the water away. And I asked the driver about that, and he said, yeah, it rains like it all the time. You get used to it. So I don't have a problem with people from Mexico or any other South American country for that matter wanting to come to America to live the American dream, to assimilate into American culture. But I just want to know A, that they're here legally. I want to know where they're at. And I want them to pay their fair share of taxes. Is that so much to ask? Apparently, to the left, it is. So, thanks to Donald Trump, we're finally having a conversation about illegal aliens in this country, illegal immigration. And hopefully, the elitist in our Congress will finally listen to we the people as we shout, stop allowing America to be invaded. Okay, you've watched this show before. I usually have a commercial. I'm not doing it because of the time on this, but I'm going to switch gears here. I suppose you've seen where the hackers have exposed AshleyMadison.com. 19 kids and counting star or former star Josh Duggar has come out as being listed on there 3 different times in 3 different profiles. I mean, this guy is making Jim Baker look saintly. Seriously, I figure his wife is divorcing him or going to divorce him now. This, Bill Clinton's got more morals than this guy. And then it was found out that there are about 10,000 government employees' email addresses listed on AshleyMadison.com, which tells me that at least half, if not more, of our Congress is probably there. Oh. And if that's the case, Donald Trump may just very well become president of the United States. Now, speaking of which, did you hear about the 15-year-old kid, D's Nuts, who is an actual candidate for president? He's polling at 9%. He's like fourth or fifth now in the field as far as percentage is concerned. I mean, who knows? The kid might be worth a whole lot more than some of the people running for president right now. And in that vein, I have decided to sign off. I've got a paid political ad here that I said I was going to run. So if you would watch it, I would appreciate it. So until next week, you guys have a good one. Later. And now, here comes the political ad. Hi, friends. I'm Harry Balls, and I'm running for president. Now, I'm not some Democrat. I sure ain't one of those Republicans. Those bastards have gotten us into a mess up here in Washington, D.C., And as an independent, I, Harry Balls, can go there and fix things. That's what I'm good at. And I'm not Harry Sphincter, that guy running on the Communist Party ticket. That man is an asshole. I'm the real Harry Balls, and I have a record for getting things done. I have done lots of stuff, and I can do a lot more stuff in the White House, like talk on the phone, sit down, look important. Hell, I could outdo that current asswipe in the Oval Office, because I don't play golf. I bowl, and occasionally play craps in the alley behind the apartment. And I ain't got no first lady to hang around and tell you how to eat and stuff. I have a dog. Everybody likes dogs. And if you don't like dogs, you ain't American. Now for my platform. My view on foreign policy is simple. Foreigner was a great band back in the day, but we don't need a reunion tour. They're old, and the tickets would cost too much. On education, I'm pretty sure we need that, so we'll keep it. And on the budget, I bet I could balance a budget if I had a job. That's why I'm running for president. I need a job. My unemployment's about to lapse, and I need the money. So I'm running for president so I can make lots of money. With all the graft and corruption in Washington, I promise to keep the status quo. I don't want to piss anybody off. So in closing, remember, a vote for me is it's a vote for me. So vote for me, Harry Balls, come election day. Paid for by the committee to elect Harry Balls for president. Harry Balls, treasurer.